Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Aaron. I guess this is what I get for boring everyone at the Curie with my research interests for the last 10 years. So to start off with, I'm just going to talk about metabolism of the heart, and then go on to the ideas, the current concepts behind heart failure metabolism, which even in the sort of short time I've been interested in has changed very considerably. When I first started my research, there was the data from Howell in the States suggesting there was this reversion to fetal genotype with an increase in free fatty acids and a decrease in glucose, and that's, I think, all been switched on its head with the absolute explosion in molecular biology of the last 6 years, which has profoundly changed our understanding of failing heart. So to start off with, the most important thing, of course, is metabolism, and in a healthy adult heart, acetyl-CoA enters the TCA cycle in the majority of times from beta oxidation of free fatty acids, and a small amount of time from oxidation of pyruvate, which is derived equally from glycolysis and lactate oxidation. And of course, in periods of increased demand, the shift is towards glycolysis. Free fatty acids provide the highest energy yield per mole of substrate, but unfortunately also have the highest option demand. And in counterpoint to that, glucose provides the least energy per mole of substrate, but is the most efficient of oxygen. And there's about a 40% increase in ATP production per oxygen molecule consumed when we compare glucose and free fatty acids. And I guess that's probably the concept behind the majority of the metabolic therapies we have today for dealing with failing. So the second step is oxidation, and the catabolic pathways for carbohydrates, free fatty acids, and most of the amino acids all converge on the formation of acetyl-CoA. That's then decarboxylated, producing ADH and FADH. And these are then used as well-known electron transport chain to produce ATP. ATP is really tightly coupled to oxygen availability, to the ATP and ADP ratio, to the ATP and phosphate ratio, and also to NADH and NAD plus ratios. And one of the most important sort of drivers of this is that the ATP-ADP ratio, and certainly in the conditions of low demand, this is a really powerful inhibitor of the TCA cycle. So we can see here, this is one of our sort of standard textbook diagrams. We see that glucose taken up by the GLUT receptors on the membrane is phosphorylated, converted to pyruvate, and then comes to acetyl-CoA and enters the TCA cycle. And we have free fatty acids that are uptaken by cell by fat and FABP, and all these receptors are shown are quite profoundly changed in heart failure. And again, they're then taken into the mitochondria by CPT, which is another potential target for metabolic therapies. They then undergo beta oxidation and again enters the TCA cycle. And the third step, and probably one of the most important steps now, is transfer and utilisation of ATP. And that undergoes the reaction of PCR plus ADP, catalysed by CK, becomes creatinine and ATP. And this reaction generates ATP approximately 10 times faster than actually occurs through oxidative phosphorylation. And certainly in recent years, mainly through work pioneered with Stephen Newbower in Oxford, the ATP to PCR ratio has been shown to be a really useful measure of cardiac energetics, and has also been shown to be a useful predictor of mortality and heart failure. And this is some of Stefan's work with NMR, and we can see at the right at the bottom, we can see if you look at the very tall spike on the left, that's phosphoprotein, and we have ATP down to the right. And we see as in a DCM patient, which is the second one down, and then an end-stage DCM patient actually died of heart failure soon after the examination, you can see there's quite a profound change in the PCR to ATP ratio. So, next I want to talk about is the phenotype of the failing heart. And so, a failing heart's metabolic remodel, and it results in a progressive loss of ATP. And this remodelling is controlled by numerous energy sensors, most importantly AMP. And this changes the phosphorylation state of many proteins for the short-term preservation of ATP. And it also activates many transcription factors such as PPAR alpha, PGC1 alpha, which controls the long-term remodelling of the entire ATP synthesis and utilisation pathway, which reduces flux through the CK reaction we described above, which results in a fall in increasing ATP concentrations, AMP concentrations, and also results in increasing glucose uptake. And we look at some animal data in a PGC1 alpha knockout mouse. We can see that if we try and drive that mouse heart with dobutamine, there's a significant loss in contractile reserve, and when they actually compared ATP levels at baseline, there was about a 20% reduction in the amount of ATP available to these hearts in this PGC1 alpha knockout mouse. So the failure myocardium has about a 30% reduction in ATP concentrations, and this endpoint seems to be the same in all etiologies of heart failure. And the rate of ATP fall is progressive, and it's in part due to loss of the adenine nucleotide pool, but there's still a lot of speculation as to what controls the magnitude of this fall in ATP concentration. We also have a degree of decrease in metabolic reserve. The decreased creatine concentration is coupled with a decrease in CK activity, which combines to limit energy reserve. And certainly look at the velocity of the CK reaction, there's about a 50% reduction in heart failure, which really represents a major loss of energy reserve. But this appears to be due to post-translational change in phosphorylation states of some of the intermediate metabolism, and this does appear to be a reversible reaction, which again gives us hope that metabolic therapies may well be able to improve the energy status of the heart. So certainly when we look at creatine and CK activity, some of these slides aren't terribly clear. On the slide on the table on the left, we've got creatine concentration, on the right we've got CK activity. And these are the patients undergoing heart surgery on the far left. These are accident and heart failure, brain dead victims in the middle. And then we have advanced heart failure on the right. So you can see in both the creatine concentration and CK activity, we've got a progressive fall in these reactions. So what we end up with is decreased CK flux, we end up with decreased ATP. This results in hyperphosphorylation in the cytoplasmic reticulum, which reduces sodium release from the cytoplasmic reticulum, and this ends up reducing contractility. Again, there's a lot of speculation about whether this decrease in creatine is compensatory or is it as a deleterious part of heart failure. It certainly reduces the primary energy buffer of the heart, but it also minimises the increase in free ADP. And if you look at the free Gibbs energy required to drive that equation, we actually see that it actually normalises the free Gibbs energy, and actually therefore the decrease in free ADP actually helps drive that ATPase reaction. So actually maintaining a low systolic ADP concentration results in low AMP, and that reduces the net loss of purines from the heart, and therefore some loss of creatine may be actually necessary to maintain cell viability. So what we have in heart failure is a chronic reduction in cardiac output that obviously results in persistent elevation of the sympathetic nervous system and the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. And the increased catecholamines have a direct detrimental effect on the heart. It results in marked enzyme loss, the substantial direct oxygen wasting effect, increased plasma-free fatty acids, and of course significant coronary vasoconstriction. There's also a degree of insulin resistance associated with heart failure. We know that glucose abnormalities are overrepresented in heart failure, and 43% of patients with heart failure have significant insulin resistance, and that correlates to a certain extent with increasing catecholamine levels. And the plasma-free fatty acids are increased with insulin resistance, and that leads to increased fatty acyl coenzyme A. It inhibits intracellular insulin signaling, and it actually inhibits glucose uptake. Along with that, we have a degree of mitochondrial uncoupling, and of course the integrity of the mitochondrial membrane is central to the efficiency of energy generation. Uncoupling proteins lower the proton gradient, allowing protons to re-enter the mitochondrial matrix, producing heat rather than ATP. And coupled with oxidative stress products, fatty acid oxidation, PPAR alpha, all increase the expression of uncoupling proteins. And this unfortunately results in very inefficient use of free fatty acids as fuel. So we have a concept then of metabolism in moderate heart failure, where the myocardium appears to utilise free fatty acids as a predominant substrate. Plasma free fatty acids inhibits glucose transport and glucose phosphorylation. Activated free fatty acids, acyl-CoA, is transported into the mitochondria by CPT1. And then we have negative feedback, which reduces fatty acid oxidation and therefore further increases in the intracellular concentration of cytoplasmic free fatty acids. Once heart failure becomes more severe, this metabolism is confounded by reduced PPAR alpha activity, which downregulates fatty acid oxidation, it impairs mitochondrial oxidative capacity, it increases uncoupling proteins, and further reduces the activity of PGC1 alpha. And then one of the first slides from my research, we demonstrated, certainly in heart failure, that there's a downregulation of all the major metabolic modulators of heart failure. So we have significant downregulation of PGC1 alpha, ER alpha, PPR alpha, CPT1, which is of course the enzyme which it takes up fatty acids like mitochondria, PDP, for an SLC24A. So we end up with this idea of a vicious circle of metabolic modelling, where we have a hyperadrenergic state, which results in decreased calcium cycling, decreased beta receptor activity in glucose, further decreasing cardiac output, but increase in free fatty acid results in decreased glycolysis, increased glucose phosphorylation, increase in mitochondrial coupling proteins, and a decrease in glycolysis. So what about metabolic therapies? So as I said earlier, the idea is that the increased oxygen efficiency of glucose metabolism suggests that therapies that suppress fatty acid metabolism and increase glycolysis may improve cardiac metabolism. And this rationale, I think, is equally valid in a patient with chronic heart failure who's undergoing wasteful free fatty acid metabolism, as it is in the patient who's undergoing surgery who have an acute ischemic refusion injury. So, of course, the first one we'll talk about is increasing glucose metabolism. Unfortunately, it's a pretty unattractive long-term therapy using a glucose insulin potassium patients with chronic ischemic cardiomyopathy, although there is data that suggests it does lessen ventricular dysfunction. And to a certain extent, that's due to the high insulin levels suppressing free fatty acid levels. And of course, it drives glycolysis during hypoxia and causes an increase in ATP production, but at the expense of increased lactate. This is one of the things we've done a lot of in Birmingham, and myself and Aaron have run a number of randomised trials from about 1999 to 2007. And the greatest benefit we demonstrated in these clinical trials was in patients who had a preoperative energetic abnormality, and certainly patients in LVH who demonstrated abnormal energetic status certainly seemed to drive significant benefit from that. And when we looked at using metabolomic analysis to look at markers of high energy phosphates, we saw in these LVH hearts there was a significant change in all the high energy phosphates. And when we did a sort of more complicated principal components analysis, looking at all the changes in the intermediate metabolism between these heart failure patients and non-heart failure patients, we could quite clearly differentiate the two patients together. So they really have quite a profound change in all the intermediate metabolites in these patients. And what we demonstrated was that glucose insulin potassium significantly increases AMPK phosphorylation, and we showed a huge difference in other patients with GIK. And the clinical endpoint of that trial was a significant increase in cardiac output throughout the trial period studied, and an absolute reduction in low cardiac output state in these patients from about 30% down to about 11%, which is clearly very attractive as a means of treating that. But of course, GIK is a very labour-intensive strategy, and actually looked at the overall morbidity of these patients. There was an increase in the need of vasopressors, there was an increased risk of hypoglycemia. I don't really ever think that GIK is really going to take on as a standard therapy, but I think it demonstrates that there is a direct metabolic effect of the heart with GIK, and therefore metabolic therapies per se are worth pursuing. So the next thing really has been fatty acid oxidation inhibitors, and there are two main ones: trimetazidine and perhexidine. Trimetazidine is a partial fatty acid oxidation inhibitor, which inhibits 3 keto-SL-CoA thiolase, and that reduces mitochondrial uncoupling. And there's certainly a lot of data, mainly from the Italians, demonstrating benefits in long-term survival in patients with heart failure. But I think the biggest problems with that is there's a big problem with patents at the moment with that drug, and there's also some problems with licensing in Europe. So a more popular drug that's been studied certainly in Australia and here in the UK is perhexidine, which is a CPT1 inhibitor. And it's theoretically a very attractive drug, but the mechanism of action is unproven at the moment. And we've just finished our second trial of perhexidine in cardiac surgery at the Kiwi. We've randomised almost 500 patients now, so that's the preoperative strategy. And unfortunately, all these trials have demonstrated very clearly there's absolutely no beneficial effect on either metabolism when we studied this with a metabolomic profile or in clinical outcomes of the patients. And certainly some data that Nigel Jury, one of our research fellows, has generated from in his time in Australia, looking at HPLC analysis, seems to suggest that actually the drug does not work in the way that everyone thought it would. The other thing as well is it's clearly there's a lot of scope for insulin sensitization in these hearts. There's a big issue with insulin resistance, And in part this works through AMPK, and there's some provisional data that metformin itself could be a very potent metabolic agent. And in a large Canadian study they demonstrated that patients without diabetes but with insulin resistance treated with metformin, there was a significant reduction in heart failure mortality. And again, in patients with diabetic heart failure, those treated with metformin had a significantly improved outcome. And there's also some options of increasing the adenine nucleotide pool, and there's been some success with phenotype with this, which seems to protect against the loss of adenine nucleotides and protect against diastolic dysfunction. Other agents include PGC1 alpha agonists, nitric oxide dependent agents such as Viagra, and AMPK activators. So in conclusion, heart failure is associated with profound changes in myocardial energetics metabolism. There's no real definitive data as yet that demonstrates benefits of any metabolic therapy for chronic heart failure, although clearly the prevention and treatment of insulin may well be beneficial in these patients. Of insulin resistance is going to be beneficial in these patients. I think metabolic therapies do offer promise in cardiac surgery, especially in patients with abnormal energetics. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Neil. I think we started a little bit late, so I think we've got time for just if anyone's got any